Hey guys, Austin here and welcome back to the OutJeeping YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to rebuild your steering gearbox in your Jeep Cherokee XJ. The steering gearbox is found in a lot of vehicles throughout this era, and it's going to work for all models of Cherokees and Comanches, regular TJs and YJs as well. It's going to be very similar. Now today, I'm going to be showing you the whole process of tearing down the steering gearbox and putting it all back together with some new seals, cleaning it all up so that way it's nice and refreshed and you won't have a leaking box. Now the reason why I'm doing this is because this Jeep right here has over 350,000 miles on the original steering box, and I've just about had it with the loose steering on it. Everything else is nice and tight and a lot of slop coming from that steering gearbox, so we're going to be replacing it with a new to me used one that's hopefully less miles, and we're going to put some new seals in it. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Alright, so first, quickly taking a look at the Jeep and why the reason I'm replacing the steering gearbox is because I got a lot of slop in my steering and I've narrowed it down to the steering gearbox just to show you how much slop I have. That's a good 5-10 degrees of the steering wheel moving without the front wheels even moving at all. And you might have other issues on your steering if it has some looseness in it. I've just narrowed it down on my specific case to the steering gearbox, and I'll show you that next. So I guess it might be a little bit hard for you to see with all the stuff that's in here, but we'll have to take that all out when we take the steering gearbox out. Pretty much when the steering shaft twists in here, I can see it moving here, and it's not moving outside of the pinion. It's moving the shaft. The steering shaft is moving with a lot of play that goes into the pinion of the steering box and nothing out the other side. And when I go back and forth, I get a big clunk. If I wiggle the pinion shaft on it a little bit, I get a little bit of play. I can feel that in there. So I know that the steering box is pretty much worn out. So instead of buying a new or remanufactured one, because I've heard some horror stories on those just not being well put back together. Actually had a friend that replaced his, and it took him 3 boxes to finally get a good one without crapping out on him right away. So I just jumped on eBay, got a used one off of a Cherokee as well, and then we're just going to throw in a seal kit. It's a little bit of a tedious process, so I'm going to show you every detail on how to do it. I've done it on the J10 about 1.5 years ago, so I'm pretty familiar with it since it's very similar design in that. So let's go take a look at the box we're going to be rebuilding along with all the components. Alright, so here is the steering gearbox that we're going to be rebuilding today. Got this off of eBay for around 80 bucks, which isn't too bad in my opinion. I quickly just tested turning this in and out, and it seems to move pretty good without any clunking. A little bit of oil in it, as you can see, it's trying to come out there. This one did come with the Pitman arm still on there. That's still hot. I actually just took that off camera. You're going to need a Pitman arm puller and pretty much a torch, and you got to get that pretty hot, and with a Pitman arm puller to get that off. In the past, I've just had to cut this because I didn't want to damage the seal, but since we're rebuilding it, it's alright if the seal is melted. We're just going to put a new seal in that anyway. The nut that holds that on is a 1 5/16", but if you have a 33mm socket, that sometimes works too, but just has a little bit more play. Now this rebuild kit is around 20 bucks, got it off of Rock Auto, has all the seals you will need in here, all the gaskets and such, because we're going to be taking all the gears out. There's ball bearings that are in there as well, and we're going to reseal this whole entire unit. I also went and got a steering box bearing right here. I'm hoping this is the right one. That way we can replace it. That's inside of here, but it does look a little small, so this might be the wrong one that Rock Auto sent me. But either way, if the bearing's good, we'll ride with the original one that's in there. Along with that, once this is all rebuilt, I'm going to throw it in the Jeep, and then I'm also just replacing a tie rod end that's at the Pitman arm, since it's kind of hard to tell whether that one was bad or not, since I felt some clicking around there. So I just got a new tie rod end and collar right here. I'll throw that on right away when we put the new box on. Alright, so I'm going to dive right into tearing this box down, and the first thing I'm going to do is take off these old plugs right here. It looks like they just cut it off from probably a junkyard or something. These are going to be 18mm, so I already cracked them free. I'm just going to pop them all the way out now. And make sure you have either cardboard down, or I got some pig mats here, because there's going to be oil that's going to be stuck up in here. It's going to leak out. You can, if you have a big pan or such, you can tear this down on that. That way you don't get oil everywhere as well. Alright, so with those out, Next thing we're going to do is start to disassemble the pinion shaft that goes into this box. Now they got a retaining nut that's on here, then they also have this tighten up jam nut, which is basically just this flat piece where you can use a spanner wrench with these two holes to grab onto it, or you don't necessarily need that. You can take a old junky pair of needle nose pliers and you can use that just as well. But before we disassemble that, we're going to mark the exact location on how this is tightened up. And to do that, we're going to make just little marks with the chisel. I'm going to make one on the case, one on this outer collar, and then one on this inner piece right here. Now if your box is clean, you could also use some paint marker, but I have a feeling that might come off in the rebuild process. So there we go, I got my 3 marks on there. Next thing I'm going to do is take a chisel with a hammer and loosen up here where they have this notch. I'm going to start taking some penetrating fluid and just kind of work it in all around here. And then see if I can break this guy free. Starting to move a little bit. If you got a big vise, you can also stick this whole box in there. My vise isn't quite big enough. This is going to work just fine. See, I already got that loose in there. This whole piece might just come off together just because of how rusty it is. There we go. Going to lift up on that piece, and we're just going to set everything to the side for now. This is our pinion shaft. We're just going to lift up on that, pull this out as well. Down here you can feel the worm gear, it twists. We're going to leave that into place for now because there's ball bearings holding that in place. We'll move on to the Pitman shaft, or the output shaft. Right now I'm going to kind of drain some more oil, dump it in this pan. I'm going to put my finger on this worm gear because otherwise it'll just kind of rotate out of place. And I'm just going to dump it in here and get any other residual oil out. Alright, so next thing I'm going to do is undo these 4 bolts. They're going to be a 9/16, and this whole selector shaft and this top plate are going to come with it out of the box. And we don't want to touch our adjustment nut right here. We're going to worry about that later, so make sure you don't undo that, otherwise you'll lose your adjustment. This thing was full of oil. Before that comes out all the way, I forgot there's a snap ring that's down in here that we're going to remove next. This kind of holds all the seals in assembly. We're going to take a snap ring pliers and remove that snap ring. Alright, there we go. Set that to the side. Alright, so once we got those 4 bolts out, we can go ahead and remove our pinion shaft right here. You might have to wiggle it a little bit so that way our teeth are able to come out of the slot right here. Take this and put it to the side for now. Then so I'm going to take this worm gear out. It's basically like unthreads, kind of loosen up, and it'll come out of here with all the ball bearings as well. Now behind this worm gear we have a thrust bearing. There's also another washer that's stuck in here. Oh, as you can hear, there goes all my ball bearings. So I'm going to take a magnet, grab this backup washer, put it together over here so I know where it is. Now that I got all the ball bearings just kind of in there, I'm going to dump this into the pan here so I don't lose anything. There should be around 20 something balls in there, so that's probably not all of them. So the next thing we got to do is take off the end cap and get that snap ring off. So to take this end plug out, there's going to be an access hole on one side, and it's going to help us pop out a snap ring that's inside of here. I'm going to get a punch and punch that through. once you hit it enough, you'll start to see it come out on the end here. So we got a screwdriver. I'm gonna put some safety glasses on so this doesn't go flying. It's okay if this bends, we have a new one to replace it with. Alright, so I finally got that snap ring out. That's what it ended up like. This thing was so corroded in this valley where it sits just because this cap is aluminum. This is cast steel and this is spring steel. So dissimilar metals, they eventually corroded because this thing just gets blasted with salt underneath the vehicle. But my technique to get that out was just kind of work it away. Work it a little bit at a time, take a vice grips and hammer the vice grips away from that pocket and just go all the way around. Eventually got it out. It fought me the whole way. Alright, so before we pound out our end cap and this internal assembly out of here, we have to take off our little cage that's holding our ball bearings in. And inside here we should be able to rotate the internals. There we go. And there's also a strap that's holding that cage in. This cage has two halves to it, so when we install it, we're going to have to put the ball bearings in and close the halves, stick it down here, then there's a strap covering it, and there's two 3/8 bolts. So we got to undo those. There's one little bolt. We'll move this a little bit so that way we can get the other one. There's the other nut. And then we're going to take our strap out. And then we got our cage with our two halves. We're going to lift up together. There we go. Those are our two halves that go together. Doesn't look like there's any more ball bearings. So now we should have clearance to hammer this out. So the next thing to do once that snap ring is off, we have to take this aluminum cover off of here. And since mine is pretty corroded in here, I've been soaking it with some Kroil. It's really stuck in on the case. Alright, so I'm just going to pound that out. I got my sealed driver kit in there, and you want to make sure you're hammering on the right surface. There is a flange that is on the case side. That's not what we're hammering on. It's actually on this internal piece, so I stuck my seal driver adapter down on here and then stuck the shaft on there. It's sitting down right in here, but I'm going to take a piece of wood now, and that way I'm hammering on the right surface, and we should pop this off. There we go. And that's our cap right there. It's all corroded on the edges. That's why it was a struggle to get out. Normally it should just pop right out. But now we got our end assembly right here. This is our main unit on the inside here. We're going to set everything to the side. Alright, so with that main assembly out, the last thing I'm going to do here is take out the seal that's inside this case here. So I'm going to take a seal puller. Hopefully I should be able to fit that in there. With that snap ring out, we should be able to pull this out of here. Looks like we got a metal washer that was underneath that snap ring, just all full of gunk. And then we should have this seal. There we go. That's our seal. Then there's also another metal washer behind it. And then we should have a spacer in here too. And then back here is a bearing. I'm going to leave that spacer in there since I'm not replacing this bearing, since I don't have that and it looks to be in decent shape. No missing needles or anything, so we're going to keep that. And now we're at pretty much the halfway point, so I'm going to clean up everything on here, relay everything out for reassembly, get everything organized, and then we'll start replacing some O-rings. Alright, so I went ahead and got everything all cleaned up, took this whole box, flushed it out, put some super clean on it, scrubbed it off as best I could, flushed it out, and then I wiped everything down with some brake clean. All the internal parts for the most part are all clean. So now we're at the point where we're going to start replacing seals, and we're going to do one at a time and then match them up with the ones that are in the kit, and that way we shouldn't have any confusion on what goes where. I'm going to start with this pinion assembly right here that goes on the front of the case, and we got a snap ring that's down in here that's holding on this one seal, so I'm going to start with that first. This piece is still a little bit crummy, so I'm going to clean this guy up as well. I'm going to take my snap ring pliers and get this snap ring out of here. go. Then on the back side, we're just going to be gently pounding it out, the seal with a screwdriver, so make sure you're behind the seal lip. I'm going to take and set this up here. Just gently hammer this out. There we go. Old seal popped out of place. And I guess the bearing that I ordered looks to be the bearing that's right here. It's not the Pitman shaft bearing, but it is the input shaft. So I want to see if I can pound this guy out as well. Looks like it's pressed in. So I'm going to find a socket or something and line that up and pound it out. There we go. And that's our bearing right here. Feels a little gritty, so good thing we're replacing that. Now, under normal circumstances, this piece right here would just unscrew from this inner piece, but this is so darn rusted, I'm going to end up destroying it, just trying to break it free. But it shouldn't be a problem since we're tightening this back to the same exact location as you saw in the beginning of the video, so that's why we made all those marks, so it should be fine. I'm going to go ahead and clean this up a little bit more, so that way there's no dirt on this while we're putting our new components in. And I'm also going to clean out this little groove that the snap ring goes in, so that way it's nice and clean and it'll snap in perfectly. So I forgot to turn my camera mic on for this portion, but basically the seal that I have is not the correct one in this kit. This kit did not come with the correct one for the input shaft here, so I actually went down to O'Reilly's, thought they had one in stock, they don't, and I only have today to put this in. Luckily, the original seal that was in there is not damaged from it, me pushing it out. I just cleaned it up and it actually looks in pretty good shape, so I'm going to reuse that. So I got a new bearing here, going to lube it up with some high temp grease so that way everything goes in nicely. And then I'm just going to push it all the way in till it bottoms out on the underside. There's a little bit of a lip. I'm going to hammer that in all the way with my seal driver kit. And then we have our seal. I'm going to push that in, but not go in all the way. And then we also have this dust cover that was kind of stuck to the seal, all full of grease and everything. We're just going to hammer that in just a little bit till we see that groove where our snap ring is going to go in. And then we can put our snap ring in. Let's go a little bit more. So I got our snap ring, and once again, kit doesn't come with a new one for this, so we'll reuse the old one. And we'll set this down into the groove. There we go. Now on the back side here, there is one O-ring, so we're going to take that off and match it. Hopefully we have a new one in our kit. So it looks like it's this guy right here. Just going to set this down into the O-ring groove. Alright, now this piece is all rebuilt and ready to go in. Next I'm going to work on the Pitman shaft seal over here. We have the bearing that's in here. I wasn't able to find a new one, so overall it looks pretty good, and on the Pitman shaft there's no major scarring or anything like that, so bearing is still in good condition. Alright, so taking a look at the new seal that's going to be replacing this one. It is a little bit different design than what the original is in this kit. So the seal here is actually a little bit thinner, but it also includes a dust seal as well. And if you put those together, they come up with the same thickness as what the original seal is. So that's pretty much what we're going to be replacing the original with. So it does also come with a spacer right here, so but only one of them. So I'm going to reuse one of our washers, spacers. I'm going to put that in first. If that's on top of the spacer, that's on top of the needle bearing that's down here as well. And then next I'm going to push in our main seal that's going to go in there, and then I'm going to put in our dust seal, and then I'm going to finish it off with another spacer and then a snap ring. So I'm going to take a little bit of high temp grease again and just lube up this bore and the seal outer surface. And I'll gently tap this into place. Then I'll take our dust seal, do the same thing. Looks like I just got to go a little bit more once I have that final washer on there, just so I have enough clearance to put that new snap ring in. I think about right there is good. I got our new snap ring. I'm going to set that in here. There we go. So now we actually improved that by putting that dust seal in there. Now once again, once you replace all of your stuff, take all the old components, put them to the side so you don't get them mixed up with the new stuff. Alright, so now for this big internal piece, we have one Teflon seal right here we're going to replace it with. And we want to make sure that on the new one we really don't stretch it out, because you'll have issues trying to fit this into the bore. And underneath that Teflon seal there is going to be an O-ring. So I'm going to pry that off, put that to the side, and then dig out this O-ring, pull that off, set it to the side. I'm going to clean that O-ring groove out, that way there's no crap stuck in there. Now we got our new Teflon seal and our new O-ring. And I'm just going to very lightly put the smallest amount of grease just to coat this. Just to put a film on there. Then I can set our O-ring in. Then our new Teflon seal. Very careful not to stretch this out. Now I'll just put a little film around this bore right here where it's going to slide into the steering box. And we'll set that to the side. Now inside our steering box we have a big O-ring, so we're going to take that out, and then I'm going to clean out this groove right here that we're having issues with, trying to take out that old snap ring. Make sure all this is nice and clean when you're putting in new parts. Okay, with that clean, once again, I'm going to grease this bore up just a little bit, and then where that O-ring is going to go as well, kind of keep that in place. Then I got our new big O-ring. That's going to sit in this pocket right here. So now we can stick this bearing manifold essentially back in here. Now I've had problems in the past, as you can see, just trying to fit this Teflon seal over this. It stretches it out a little bit, and that's going to cause issues trying to line this up in here. So this might take a few tries, just trying to massage it in there. We want to make sure that it doesn't pinch or anything as we're setting this into place. So I'm going to put this vertical, that way I can kind of see the seal. And actually this O-ring for the cap, we can wait to put that in until this is all the way set down into place. And as you can see, it is already in there, and it's going to try and roll that Teflon seal. So I'm just going to very carefully massage this all the way around with the pick and trying to make sure it gets in there. You'll know when it goes in because this whole assembly will drop down further into the case. Okay, finally got that to go in and pushes down in there. Just had to work it around. I tapped a little bit with a rubber mallet right here just to kind of make it go, and then it would just be one side of that Teflon O-ring where it wouldn't want to set into place. So I just massaged it a little bit, trying to press it into that groove. Since it has that O-ring underneath it, it's kind of that cushion, it's wanting to push it out. So I just kind of slowly went around, tapped it a little, and finally got that to go in. So now the next thing we can do is, once again, we have that bigger O-ring. We're going to set that into this groove right here. Then we can take our cap and put a little grease on this as well. And we're going to set this down into place. Alright, so I finally got that cap to sit down there flat. I actually had to take it back out and just kind of sand on the edges of this cap because of all that corrosion that was on there. It just made it a little too tight and it wasn't sitting flat when I tried to press it in. But now that I finally got that all the way down there, I got my groove for this snap ring to go in there. So now I need to work this ring in, probably with a series of screwdrivers and such. Get it started on one end and just kind of slowly work it in there. And when you do put this in, you want to orientate it so that way wherever this gap is, it's not where this hole is. So that way if this has to come apart again, you'll be able to take this out. Alright, so I've never seen that before with this snap ring. It's pretty much in all the way around, except it won't snap in because it's overlapping the other side, and it's pretty much pressed in all around there. So I think I just have to take this out again and trim it off. I might just cut it when it's up here. That way I don't lose this being in place. There we go. Now that's put in there, snapped into place, just had to trim 1/8 of an inch off. So now that's all put in, now we can move on. Alright, so next we got our piston assembly. This kind of all just comes apart. This little collar slides onto here and locks in with this indentation right there, and this was over just like that. Once you take it apart, you're going to have an O-ring that just sits in this groove on here on this piston portion. We're replacing that along with these 3 Teflon seals. So once again, we're going to match them up. Got our 3 Teflon seals, our new ones right here. And then as far as our O-ring, come with a few different sizes, so make sure you get the correct one. Looks like it's that one right there. And then I'm just going to replace these. I'm going to pull out, be very careful with these Teflon O-rings, so that way you don't mar up the surface on here. And there is an O-ring underneath it once again, which matches up with the 3 extra that we have in our kit. Pop that off. Then we'll pop off the O-ring that's underneath it. Then we have our last 3 O-rings in the kit. They all probably should be the same size. And those are going to go in these grooves first. Just putting a little bit of grease on here. And then we'll start feeding these on. Make sure you don't stretch these out too much. Alright, 3 O-rings are on. Now we got our Teflon seals over here. Which are essentially just our wear bands that are wearing on the inside of the bore. Very carefully, I'm going to try and do this by hand so I don't stretch it out too much. I'm going to work this one, it snapped into the first groove, but I'm going to work this one all the way to the back groove. Just going slowly, a little bit of distance at a time. There that one goes. Now the little O-ring that's on this inner piece, for some reason, is not in our kit, so we're just going to have to reuse that one. Alright, so before we put this O-ring in, we need to put our valve body back together, and then put our O-ring in, and then put on our worm gear and assemble this whole thing into the box as one unit. So once you have everything out, you might realize that you can put this in either way, but there is a certain way that this has to go in. So I'll show you that real quick since it kind of stumped me for a little bit. There is diagrams online that you can look it up. I'm just going to put a little bit of grease in here. This O-ring end of this little collar is going to go towards the end here, so I'm going to install it this way. And then be careful with that O-ring. There it goes, pops into place. And we're going to push it through, not all the way through where it pops out, but good enough to where it's like there. And now we can see there's a little hole right there. That's going to match up with the hole in our pinion shaft right here. So I'm going to feed this through, and we're going to line those holes up together. And once it's locked in, I'm going to push on this pinion shaft, and now we have this little cutout right here that's going to go to a locking pin on this side. I made a little bit of Sharpie mark, so I'm going to rotate this assembly over to here, and I'll push this all the way in. Just just going to gently tap it. There it goes. And we're locked in. We can't twist the pinion shaft from the valve body. So we're going to hold that there. Now we can put our O-ring in on this side. And then we should be able to take our seal and everything. We'll lube this up once again. And put a little bit on that new bearing that's in there. Then we're going to take our pinion seal assembly with the bearing, feed it onto here. You put a little bit more grease in here. Don't want nothing going in dry. You can use power steering fluid, that works fine as well. I just find it to be a little bit more messy. Then we'll feed this on here. There we go. Then next, our worm gear. I'm going to lube this up as well, where those ball bearings ride. The inside part of this worm gear, we're going to put our thrust washers and thrust bearing back into place. One washer and then bearing. Set that in here. And so when we have it here, we're going to line this up to our valve body. It has keyways in here and then also a locking pin that's going to, you'll see that lock in on the side. Make sure you have your O-ring down there. It's seated properly. We'll push down, make sure it seats in. So now we got our final assembly. A little more grease. I'm going to grease up the bore on the inside here because we're going to have to work with those Teflon O-rings again. To make it a little easier, you can take off that pinion seal assembly. Should be fine. We'll feed everything in here. Make sure it presses down in all the way. Now I can put our pinion assembly back in. Now I can tighten this down. I'm not going to go crazy tight quite yet until I know everything is in there properly. So now I'm going to spin the input shaft to make sure everything is turning fine. It's a little stiff because it's just that grease that's in there. But no grinding, so everything lined up perfect. Alright, so the next part is putting in our ball bearings, which is going to be a little tedious. So to do this, we basically just have to feed it into this hole, push it in with the pick pretty much, and suck it down on there. And as we work it down in there, we're going to spin our input shaft, so that way the worm gear kind of sucks in and tries to suck all of our ball bearings onto the shaft there. So I'm going to start it with the piston all the way to the left over here as far as I can go. And it got our ball bearings all cleaned up. We should have a total of 24 for this case right here. And you might notice we got two different kinds. One of them is going to have a chrome finish, another one's going to have a nickel finish. And the reason why it's like that is because there are two different diameters on there, and when we put these in, we're going to alternate either one, putting it in there. Reason being is I believe it's for smoother steering going back and forth. So I'm going to start with chrome one. Fit that in there. Use a pick. And then I'm going to move the input shaft a little bit. Until it finds its spot. You can kind of see it drop down. Oop. That guy popped out of place. Once you start putting these ball bearings in, you'll notice that the piston will start to move, because this is what these two mesh with, is with these ball bearings. So once it drops, I just put in another one. Alright, so as you're going along, this doesn't move a whole lot. I'm just working it back and forth as I'm pushing down. So I got all of them in there except for 4. As you push them in, you'll notice once you get all but 4 left, you'll have ball bearings kind of peeking out on the other side here. So the last 4 we're going to put in this cage right here. So I'm going to put a little bit of grease to hold this all into place. And with the orientation I'm going back in, just make sure I have this all correctly. Just like that. And then we'll close our cage. And I'm going to put a little bit of grease on these ends so that way they don't accidentally pop out. I'll very carefully orient this cage into place. Hold that down. And then we can take our strap, put that back over, and then we can feed in our 2 3/8 bolts. Then we can snug these up. Alright, so all of our ball bearings should be in there. We can test the input shaft. It's moving nice, and the piston is moving with, going back and forth as it should. So now I need to rotate the piston so that way the gears are facing upwards. Now next step is we can finish by putting in this Pitman shaft. We got the old seal still on here, which it has these metal tabs that kind of wrap around this top plate, so I'm going to undo those so we can get our new seal on. There we go. Now I'm just going to clean up these mounting surfaces for the seals. It has a little bit of rust and corrosion. Same thing on this side, and then we'll be back to install that seal. Alright, so I once again forgot to turn on my mic for this section of the video, so we'll do a quick voiceover. So we're going to finish up by installing this new seal onto our Pitman shaft. So we got our new one here. We're just going to slide over now that the surfaces are all clean. Once it's orientated correctly, we're going to have it up against that surface, and then we're going to bend down the new tab so it wraps around that top mounting plate. So to make sure your surfaces are clean, once again, I took a little bit of brake clean on a rag and got those all nice and clean. And now when we line up our Pitman shaft in here, we want to make sure that the gears mesh right in the middle. So we got a middle valley on the teeth that are in the box, and they're going to line up with the middle tooth that is on that Pitman shaft. Now I'm going to take a little bit of grease and grease up our bearing and our seals on the Pitman shaft, along with the mating surface on the teeth as well. Once that's all lubed up, we're going to slide our shaft into the box and once again line up our teeth to the middle valley with the middle tooth that is on that Pitman shaft. And then be careful on the other side, make sure that it moves through the seal nicely, and then we're just going to push it into place. If it's a little stiff, you can take a mallet, just kind of hammer it the rest of the way in. And then we got our bolts, we're going to feed those guys into place and loosely install them. Then I'm going to take an impact and snug these bolts up. Then I'm going to come back around and make sure that these bolts are tightened by hand. Now if we wanted, we could go ahead and replace this nut for the adjuster right here, but I'm going to leave it for this box since I'm not going to be adjusting it right away. There's nothing wrong with the original nylon nut that's in there right now, so I'm going to leave that as it is. Now last thing we're going to do is we're going to tighten up this jam nut that's on the Pitman shaft. So if you remember from the beginning of the video, we made our marks, and we're basically just going to line up all of our marks up together where I made it with the chisel on all 3 parts. And since my jam nut is kind of stuck onto that sector shaft, it's all going to tighten up together into the same location. So I found my marks on the steering box, and I'm going to line that all up, and I'm just going to tighten everything to the exact location where it was before. That way I get the appropriate preload where it was set from the factory on this Pitman shaft. So I'm going to take a chisel and a hammer and just kind of tighten up that jam nut into the exact location. I'm just going to test it one more time, make sure everything is moving nice and smoothly, and it's moving nice here with my box, so I know that everything is in there properly and there's no grinding at all. So I'm going to go ahead and replace this in my Jeep and take out the old one. I'm not going to bore you guys with that details, but we'll be back and I'll show you guys the old box that was in there. Alright, so I went ahead and swapped these steering gear boxes. So this is the one that came out of my Jeep. To swap this, it's not too hard. You got 3 bolts going through the unibody frame rail. They're going to get from the driver's side wheel well. You're going to want to undo those 3 bolts. Then you're also going to have your power steering lines up here as well. They're going to be an 18mm to get those out. Then you have your steering shaft right here, and then you want to disconnect it from the steering linkage as well from the Pitman arm, and this whole box should be able to drop out from the bottom. So this steering gearbox definitely does have a little bit of slop to it. If I wiggle the Pitman arm back and forth, you might be able to hear it. It's kind of faint, but you can definitely feel it. There's a little bit of play in here, and I also want to show you guys that you can adjust these boxes if you do have a little bit of Pitman arm play in there, and the way to do that is through this top nut right here. And you want to adjust this while it's in the vehicle, and you can drive it around and stuff, because you only want to adjust this a little bit at a time. You don't want to overdo it, otherwise you could damage the gears on the inside and possibly destroy your box. Now the way to adjust this is we have a 5/8 nut, so you're going to take a wrench, put that on top here, and then you're going to want to get yourself a 3/16 Allen, stick that into the center, and you want to break free the nut while holding the same position of the stud in the middle there. So once you break that free, you want to do it a couple of turns, and then you can adjust the steering box by turning the center shaft, and you want to do it in 1/8 of a turn increments at a time. Then you can tighten it back up, drive it around a little bit, and feel how the steering is. I ended up doing that on the new box that we just did, since it is not brand new, so it is still a worn gear set, and I just ended up doing it in 1/8 of an inch increments, taking a test drive after each one. And then I ended up actually doing about a 1/2 of a turn on it, and my steering is beautiful now. So it is actually a week later, so I made sure everything was dialed in on that. Steering is nice and tight, along as it's nice and smooth now too. I can basically turn the wheel with one finger, which is really nice. That's definitely from putting all those new seals inside of that gearbox. But back to adjusting this. If you are going to do this, you want to make sure that everything else on your steering system is nice and tight. If you have a bad tie rod end, it's not going to fix that. You definitely don't want to be adjusting this if you have other loose steering components, otherwise you risk damaging this box. And to do this with it in the vehicle, all you have to do is just remove your factory electric fan on these Jeep Cherokees, and you should be able to see the adjustment nut right on top there, and you can do it right inside the vehicle. And with that, that's going to be a wrap for today's video. If you guys are doing this on your own Jeep, hopefully you guys were able to follow along. I'll post links down in the description below for the rebuild kit. The rebuild kit that I got didn't cover the entire seals that are inside that steering gearbox, so if you want to do absolutely everything, I'll leave a link down below. You have to get the input shaft seal kit as well as along with the rebuild kit. And if you want to replace the bearings as well, I'll post those down in the description as well. So I want to thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions or comments, make sure to post them down below. If you guys want to help support the channel, check out outjeeping.com for some decals and t-shirts. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.